So I just want to say thank you to Cal. I'm having so much fun doing this, and I love being with everybody and talking about stories, but especially talking about video. So for those that don't know me, my name is Emily Knapp. You can ignore the first and last letters of my name. It's just pronounced like taking a nap. And I am the digital media manager at IDE headquarters in Denver. I've been with IDE for just over 2 years, and I help with all things communication, but especially things that we show on our website, email marketing, and social media. And I just want to let you know this deck will also be put up on our comms intranet. So if I'm running through it too quickly, you can go back and reference it again. For us to tell great stories, it's important that we feel comfortable with each other. So I'd like to share a little bit about myself really quickly. So you may have guessed my background is in film. As you can see from these photos, I've been doing it a very long time. At first, I thought I wanted to be a Hollywood director and then a producer and then an independent documentary filmmaker. But after taking a class called Public Work of Rhetoric, I was inspired to take another turn. The class title sounds really boring, but essentially what it was exploring the power of argument and storytelling in enacting social change. And so that was a way for me to marry my artistic side with something that I felt truly mattered. So it was fate that when I graduated from school, IDE happened to be hiring at the same time. I love to ask people what their favorite movie is, but I hate when people ask me because I don't feel like I have an answer. There's too many. So if anybody's curious, these are my top 10 live action movies from the last 20-ish years. That's as close as I could narrow it down. So if you ever want to talk about them, I would love to. And if you could find a theme that runs through all 10 of these, I'll give you a prize. Any questions about me before I move on to the B-roll or storytelling? Cool. So as Cal's been talking about, since I joined IDE with my video skills, it has been my dream to create a trailer. We've all seen trailers before. If anybody's seen a movie, you've seen trailers, even at home. You know, they put them on the DVDs and everything. They're short previews of movies that will be available in the future. So how is a trailer different from a commercial? Well, I don't know this for a fact, but in my opinion, both are trying to catch your attention and get you to buy something, right? But what commercials are usually selling is a product. What a movie trailer is pitching is an experience. You're paying to go sit down, experience a story, be in it, and then leave feeling something. You're not leaving with anything physical. So let's think about what IDE is selling. Do we want an audience to feel like their donor money is going towards things like tote bags or temporary fixes? Or do we want them to feel inspired to join us through their donation because they understand our long-term impact? So in order to make my IDE trailer dream come true, I need high quality footage, or what's known as B-roll, from every country. So what is B-roll? Well, I have a little 1-minute video here that's going to explain.
Back in the old days, filmmakers used 2 separate rolls of film. One was labeled A and one was labeled B. A roll can be considered your main story or subject, and then B roll is everything that you cut away to that bridges the gaps in your story. B roll can hide mistakes or jump cuts in the A roll. It visually tells your story, and if you're clever, B roll can be a visual motif used to enhance your story. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say you have a script with a line of dialogue that reads, "I buried her under that tree." It's probably a great time to cut to, you guessed it, B-roll. Both of these shots are B-roll shots recorded with the exact same equipment and camera settings, but the shot specs are slightly different. With just a little bit of upfront thought and some minor adjustments to the shot list, they communicate totally different meanings for your story.
So as we saw, A-roll is your primary footage, your interview or your scene. but nobody calls it A-roll anymore. The term B-roll stuck around because it's a great way of thinking of that quote unquote other footage that you need for your story. So if your A-roll or your primary footage is telling your story, your B-roll should be showing your story. It adds meaning and emotion, even if it doesn't directly match with what's being said. In fact, it's most often better not to have an exact match to keep your viewer engaged. So IDE has a little bit of footage in our library, enough for me to kind of limp along and create videos like this one up here. We're not going to watch it now because it's pretty long, but it is up on our YouTube channel and you can see it in this deck later. It's essentially an introduction to the IDE Ethiopia program and team. And I just wanted to point out a couple things that went well and that didn't go so well with the B-roll in this video. Where is it? Okay. Here's an example of some great B-roll. So the video begins with Olani speaking, so it's natural that we see him. What's great about this section is that Ephraim captured some really natural activities that Olani is doing. Seeing Olani at work demonstrates his position and authority, and it helps us, the audience, start to understand who and where he is. Here's an example of some all right B-roll. In this section, Olani is talking about his family and his childhood. So we're seeing some children on a swing set. It works because it represents what's being talked about, but it's weak. There's no sign that this is Ethiopia, and that's a missed opportunity. The goal, remember, is to incite that emotion, and it's much more possible to connect with Ethiopian children playing than the back of these kids' heads. Another great example of B-roll is this shot here. Ephraim actually sent this to me for a totally different project and I was able to reuse it. But what Olani is talking about here is that he wishes you could see Ethiopia. And so I really wanted to be sure to show something that you truly may see in Ethiopia if you visit with IDE. So without knowing anything about her, this woman represents both the people that we're trying to reach and what we want to mentor them on, becoming an entrepreneur. And here's some bad B-roll. So there's only so much fair use, copyright-free, free footage online. So I had to work with what I could find. There's absolutely no sign that this woman is Ethiopian or is in Ethiopia. I also received feedback that the dance that she's doing is definitely not a dance that an Ethiopian person would do. And so that brings up a danger of B-roll. I might be changing the meaning or emotion of our message with the wrong B-roll. And I may also accidentally insult someone potentially. So you really got to make sure you're getting it right and not changing the message. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm not going to do our question and answer, but I've got some examples here of some more examples of some great B-roll. And then if you want to look at some more examples from that same video of some not so great B-roll, I'd also like you to think about, if you can, what you would replace it with. For example, in the corner, this is what we're talking about, sanitation, and I have a generic sink. We can do better than that. So there's a couple different kinds of B-roll. Let's say you're watching a movie and all you see is a close-up of a guy who's really nervous. You can't really see what he's doing, but through his motions, it's clear that he's digging and he's just really anxious about something. So we understand that he's nervous, but we don't know why, so it's hard to emotionally connect with him. Imagine that before you saw this man, you saw some footage taken from a helicopter and it's looking down at Alcatraz prison. That changes the story, right? Suddenly you understand what this man is doing and why you should be invested. Good filmmakers consider location a character in their story. Our donors aren't going to know how important it is to fund agricultural innovation unless they see the dry soil and the long walk to town that the farmers are up against. Natural or undirected shots are the bulk of what you will collect. These are the shots that tell the story. For example, here, are you making a documentary about pottery? Well, you better show every step of how it's done and make it interesting. Remember that you want your video to be able to tell the story without any sound. So for example, here, we know clearly what this woman is doing and we can follow the journey without needing to hear anything. If your subject is someone like a latrine business owner, make sure you block out some time, not just to interview them, but also to follow them around and see what they're doing and get this kind of footage to support your story. If you love documentaries like me, you definitely know about this kind of B-roll. This is archival footage. Say I have a really cool story to tell about how VHS tapes, revolutionized the movie industry. Well, those are not around anymore, right? So how am I going to go out and find footage of people using these and appreciating them? Well, that's where I go back. I can look at old shows, old movies, old news footage is really great. The only thing here is that American copyright is a little bit tricky. So if we need to do this for some reason, you'll really have to work with Global to make sure that we have the rights, and it's all good. And finally, there's a category called visual detail. It's similar to natural B-roll, but it has more purpose. So let's say there's a brand new seed that farmers are using, and that's the main subject, what you want to talk about. Well, we definitely want to see that seed a lot more than we want to see things like watering cans or cows. These shots help your audience understand what is really important to pay attention to. There's an old saying that if you show a gun in the first act of a play or a movie, you must use it by the third act. And what that means essentially is everything that you have to show has a purpose. Yeah. And finally, I've got some general tips for you. As we're talking about with Cal's 6 steps, that's the bones of your story, correct? So once we have that, we can kind of brainstorm together. Are we talking about a latrine business owner, a farmer, a customer? What visuals will help tell their story? If you have a list, that will help guide you once you get out there to shoot. At the same time, it's great to be flexible. That's kind of a documentary mindset, is you go in there with what you think the story is and what you're going to follow, but you have to be open to what the true story is. If it's different than you plan, that's okay. It may be a better story, what you're actually finding, but you just need to be curious. Experimenting with angles is super fun. I think Em did this when she went to Honduras. I can't remember. I think she put the camera in like a bag of coffee beans and started recording it. And then, you can like open up the bag and it looks like, with the camera in there, you're looking down into the coffee beans. It's really easy to do. All you do is, press record and put it in the bag. We all can do that. And it adds so much fun and interest to the video. It's so much more interesting than just looking at someone talk. Along those same lines, try shooting things at different distances. Not only does this give you more B-roll, but it can kind of help tell the story. If you establish, here's a person standing in the field, then we get a little bit closer, here they are digging, even closer, here's exactly what they're planting, right? Each shot should be roughly 5 seconds. I won't need any more than that to edit. And if you're going longer than that, that's sort of breaking a filmmaking rule. You should be able to get what you need within 3 to 5 seconds. Shoot more than you need. I don't mean time, don't shoot 10 seconds, but shoot many short clips. Because you don't know when you can go back into the field, and it's always, always, always better to have more than you need. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, my favorite tip is to silence the video and try to watch it again and see just visually what story that video is telling. Working on one recently, we were working on a video pitching human-centered design, essentially. And when I muted the audio, it looked like we went out into the field, collected all this information from the people, and then brought it back and did all the work ourselves in the office. That is not the story we want to tell. But that's what it looks like, because all we had was one person at their computer demonstrating that scene. So that's all I've got for you today. I just want to say thank you. Sorry I had to go through that so quickly, but I want to make sure that people can ask Cal questions. You can also ask me questions anytime. Send me an email. If you want to talk about movies or talk about B-roll, I would be happy to. And thank you all.